Hello and welcome. My name is Ken Hubacher from EntityWise, and I'd like to introduce the Initiate/IBM Infosphere Standard Edition Introspector utility. The reason for such a long name is that this utility should be able to work with all previous versions of Initiate MDM software, as well as the current IBM Infosphere Standard Edition software as well. The purpose of this utility came from my own experience over years of doing implementations. As you know, during implementations you rely heavily on SQL to understand the different aspects, issues, or problems with member and entity data. From things as simple as did the member get created successfully, to what entity does this member belong to what are the current active attributes. All of these are typically done through a series of SQL calls. None of these are difficult, but they become tedious as any single question usually results in multiple SQL statements to get to the bottom of the issue. So the goal was to make it very easy to start up the utility and point it at any MDM version and begin looking at member, entity, and all the supporting tables. So as you can see, the target audience is experienced MDM implementers or very experienced users. So let's take a look at the capabilities. So let's take a look at this utility. For starters, you can enter either a memID_num, a memRecno, or an entity ID, also known as an entrecno, to access the member and entity data. So let's begin with the memID_num. Choose a source, the member ID, and retrieve. And you'll see down below in the table that it retrieves the member data through the MDM server. The first column is entrecno. In this case it's blank because it's a member get. The second is the memRecno, the memID_num and the source, the memstat, and the memstat is only valid for memhead, which is this row, a codrecno and modrecno, a segcode, which is memhead in this case. It's not technically a segcode, but I use it to overload, so it's an identifier. The second row you can see is actually memcompd, and here's the comp string in the data. And then the next several rows are all attribute rows. The rec_stat for all of these is active. You also have, of course, codrecno, modrecno for those. A segcode, so for instance memadder, an attribute code, which is account adder. And then the data is an XML string representation of the fields. The purpose for this is to be able to have this utility access very quickly any MDM machine without knowing the data model. This will actually just return you the field names within an XML structure for you to take a look at. Additionally, you can access member data via a memRecno. So you choose memRecno, a member type, a memRecno, and retrieve. And again, you can see that this is very similar to the last member. You have a memhead, a compd, and several different attributes. In addition, you can go ahead and access this member as an entity and do a retrieve. Whoop. And I got a warning. Didn't actually pick an entity type. Pick an entity type, then do a retrieve. And now you'll see the entire entity. This is entrecno 104 that consists of members 5, 4, and 6. And within this, you'll see that each has a memhead, a compd string, and then of course attribute values. You can also then choose to get the time instead of the odd_recno values. So if you look at these odd_recno, mod_recno, cod_recno values, these are the integer values that are index lookups to oddhead. Additionally, if you want to actually see the time that's in oddhead, you can choose to get the time, do a retrieve, and you will now see that the codrecno and modrecno have time date stamps. The purpose to add this was that these are additional calls that put a little extra burden, and if you don't need them, there was no purpose to have them. However, if you do need them, you can go ahead and check that box. You can also get data via the entity ID as well. You need to choose an entity type. We will choose 104, which is the entity we just looked at, and you can see that it came back with the same information. And this time, let's go ahead and choose an actual EMCA view. This is the account EMCA view. If I do a retrieve now, you'll see that it actually is going to return the rows that are associated with the EMCA. In addition, you should notice that there are ent_XCIA rows as well. Whenever you choose the entity, this utility also pulls back the ent_XCIA rows for each of the members, so you can actually look at the changes of membership status. In addition to this, you can also do a mem compare similar to Workbench or the command line version of that. To do so, choose memrecno and enter the two memrecnos you wish to compare, and then press the compare button, and you'll see that you get the compare information just like you do from Workbench or from the command line tool. The connection tab allows you to dynamically change connection between MDM servers. This gives you the typical credentials and server coordinates for MDM. It's changeable, and then once you make the change, if you press the change connection, it'll go out and actually establish a connection, and it'll pull back the 24-hour stats. So part of that's, you get the memput, get, search, delete, and memmerge stats for the last 24 hours, as well as the average bucket candidates, the max bucket candidates, the total bucket candidates, the total executions, and the total good executions. To use this utility, there will be a zip file. Once you unzip it, you'll have a directory structure similar to this. The 8.7, 9.0, etc. These are directory versions that hold the actual API jars for the utility. There is a run.cmd command, and inside you would actually set which version you wish to use. In this case it's 10.1, and this simply just replaces the directory structure so it points at the right version of the jars, and then it executes the main class within the jar provided. So to actually use a different version, all you need to do is replace this with the appropriate directory version that you're using. In addition, there's an entity-wise property file. This property file is used to initiate the startup of the app, and that's where the connection tab gets its initial connection coordinates from. So in this case, you have a host name of localhost, host port of 16,000, and you can see user ID, password, and whether it's going to use SSL or not. Once the utility is started, you can change it. So this is just a way to bootstrap it if you want to always connect to the same thing. And that concludes the introduction to the Introspector utility. I hope you find this utility helpful. If you wish to get a copy, please email me at khubacher@entitywise.com, and I'll be happy to send you one. We hope to have additional features added along the way, so please be sure to check back in from time to time. I welcome any and all comments and suggestions, including any errors that you may find. Please don't hesitate to contact me. Thanks again.